The X-Men and their franchise might be one of the most interesting franchises in film. It's had its revamps, its solo adventures, and even its prequels. And it definitely has the largest gap from movie to movie in terms of quality. They range from masterpieces to unwatchable. That being said, gone are the days where the X-Men stand alone in their own franchise. They will be brought into the MCU at some point, and although I love the MCU, I've been kind of fatigued by it. This might be the thing that launches me back into that fandom. Now, it is important to note when you're recasting these actors that they're part of that overall universe, meaning that any actors who appeared in a major role in the MCU are really off the table. Now, I have many ideas how the X-Men could be infused into the MCU, but what seems most likely at this point is that the cosmic energy released from the snaps in the Infinity Stones would awaken the X gene. And if I were Marvel, I would follow that template that they set up with Spider-Man. Yes, the X gene was awakened, but by the time we see them in the movies, they're fully formed and functioning. Now, the X-Men has an incredible roster of members as well as villains, and I think it would only be natural that we start at the beginning with the original members, the first class if you will, and slowly we'll progress forward and take on the new additions to the team. So part 1 will be the first class, part 2 will be the all new, all different giant-sized X-Men from the 70s, and part 3 will be the 80s, and so forth and so on. I will make a separate episode for the Brotherhood, so stay tuned, and for the other villains as well, but in this episode we're talking about the original team, the real first class. So Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Angel, Beast, and Iceman. So let's recast the X-Men. First up, we have the leader of the team, or the one who should be the leader of the team, Cyclops. The films really never got him right in my opinion. They used him as more of a ploy for a love triangle with Wolverine, and he never actually gets into that rightful role that he deserves from the comics. Now, this isn't James Marsden's fault, it was more of the script. I actually like the original casting a lot. Now, if we're recasting Cyclops, and he's already been on the X-Men for some time, he's probably come into his own. When Scott Summers first comes to the X-Mansion, he's shy and reserved. I don't want that. I want to see that Cyclops who is strong and confident, and one that already knows he's a tactician and a wonderful leader. Sure, at some points he can come off as cold, since he's very to the point, but I want that presence, that leadership, what we were missing from the films previously. That's why I went with Armie Hammer for Scott Summers. I feel like he has everything this character needs. He can really play that strong archetype, but attach many layers to it. His voice and presence is exactly what I picture when it comes to Scott. He's the perfect age, has that opposing figure, and most importantly, can really actually act.
In the Harvard Student Handbook, which is distributed to each freshman, under the heading Standards of Conduct in the Harvard Community, it says the college expects all students to be honest and forthcoming in their dealings with members in this community. Misappropriation...
And...
Yes, sir.
Punch me in the face. Go ahead.
I feel like he'd absolutely kill this role. So Armie Hammer as Cyclops. Next up we have Jean Grey, or Marvel Girl as she was called at this time. Now, I don't mind the original version, but I feel like Sophie Turner was terribly miscast. Now with Jean Grey, I don't think looking like the character matters as much as acting ability, because you need someone who's soft and gentle, but can also play that other side of the character if they decide to go the Dark Phoenix route. I think her interplay with Scott is obviously important, but she needs to be her own woman, someone who can carry herself, someone who can do the soft, but then also the fierce. That's why I went with Evan Rachel Wood. You don't have to look further than Westworld. She plays everything in the wheelhouse that this character would need. She plays that soft, warmer side with a gentle nature, and then in the more recent seasons, she plays a real badass. She really sold me on that transition, which is really tough.
You think the grief will make you smaller and sad? Like your heart will collapse in on itself, but it doesn't. I feel spaces opening up inside of me. Like a building with rooms I've never explored.
I think she could nail Jean Grey, Dark Phoenix, and everything in between with this character. It's her acting ability that really gets her this role for me. So Evan Rachel Wood as Jean Grey. Next up we have Beast. Now, I really love Nicholas Hoult, and although he does a wonderful job with the acting part of this role, he looks nothing like the part in my opinion. And although Kelsey Grammer had the voice and the look, he really lacked that physicality. I think we need something in between. A morphing of both actors. I'm looking towards more of the 90s cartoon for inspiration. I think it would be interesting to have someone who's a little bit more senior than the other actors we cast. someone who's a bit wiser and more of a friend to Professor X, someone he can really rely on. I want him to be that more interested in science and capable of fighting, but only as a last resort. I went with Joel Edgerton. I think he matches the demeanor of the character perfectly, but he also fits into that wiser, more reluctant part of the team. He can play that physicality as we've seen in Warrior, but he also plays softer characters. He really has a vast filmography. He's shown so much range in movies like Loving and Black Mass.
But I promise a smooth ride now that you're here, because we are about to go on an amazing journey together. So who's ready?
I think he could be that gentle giant or go full beast mode. So Joel Edgerton as Beast. Next up, we have my favorite member of the X-Men. Yes, an uncommon choice, but I've always loved Iceman. Although I don't mind him in the films, it's in the comics and in the cartoons that I really fell in love with this character. The best way to describe him, in my opinion, is it's like he's the little brother of the group. And if they were going to introduce us to the X-Men through a character's eyes, Bobby Drake is the character to do so. He needs to look a lot younger than the other X-Men and really act that way. I've always loved the character when he's quippy, similar to Spider-Man, but to differentiate, I think he could really go with a more sarcastic comic relief. And he's actually an Omega level mutant, which would be really interesting to explore. That's why I think Nick Robinson would do really well in this role. He's played younger before very believably, and I'm looking at his role in Love, Simon, which really sold me on his acting.
Look, this is your 20th anniversary, so I'm gonna be super real with you right now. This looks like a 4th grader made it. And like not even the smartest 4th grader in the class, just like a deeply average 4th grader.
What are you talking about? This is amazing. I got fade-ins, I got dissolved.
We can make this good. We just gotta put in, some home video, maybe put in some better music.
Better music? This was huge when we were young.
Yeah, so was Bill Cosby.
He still looks like a teenager. And although it's not a massive deal, if they want to explore Iceman coming out like he did in the comics, Nick would be okay with playing a gay character. Some actors don't want it to change their image. I think Nick Robinson could really have that sarcastic humor and bring a different dynamic to the team. So Nick Robinson as Iceman. Next up, we have Angel. Now, both iterations of this character in the movies is laughable. Not because of the casting, but because of the script. They were given extremely little to work with and end up being more of a side character. Now, Angel most notably comes from money and is very kind and caring. And as you can probably tell from his name, he's kind of a pretty boy. Soft features and a presence of warmth is required. But much like Phoenix, the tough thing with Angel is that you're actually casting 2 roles. If the MCU also wants to explore the Archangel storyline, the actor needs to be capable of that change. That's why I went with Garrett Hedlund. Now, he's been in some bad movies, I won't deny that, but it's movies like Mudbound and On the Road that really shows what he can do.
Kind of beautiful. So, do you like sunrises?
What is it you think you're doing?
Well, I think it's called flirting, but if you have to ask, I might be doing it wrong.
I think he really has that soft side, but also that harsher side that this character would need. So Garrett Hedlund as Angel. Lastly, we have Professor X. He was the hardest to cast out of all these actors. Honestly, when I hear Professor X, I just picture Patrick Stewart. Although James McAvoy also did a wonderful job with the role, I just see Patrick Stewart. I don't know if there's been a more comic book accurate casting. But if we're forced to recast him, Professor X is obviously a kind man. He needs to be calm and understanding, but also very intelligent and well-spoken. He tends to tread that line carefully of what to do in a situation and is very level-headed, but there is depth to this character, which is very rarely explored in the films. He can be selfish and very secretive, and there's also that ethical battle when you have powers like he does. You can't be all good when you're going around wiping people's minds, like he's done in the past. I want to make this character start off as the Professor X we love, but show cracks and show his confliction, similar to what they did with Dumbledore. When you start, you have full faith. Down the road, there's a lot more to this man. That's why I went with Ralph Fiennes. Now, you may picture a villain when you see his face, because he's most well known for playing Voldemort and the villain from Schindler's List, but you don't have to look far into his filmography to know he's done softer roles like The English Patient, or very sympathetic roles like Grand Budapest Hotel. He has lots of sides to him, and I think he can pull off the calm and understanding Professor X that we love.
It's as simple as this. Hannah was illiterate for the greater part of her life.
Is that an explanation of her behavior?
No. She taught herself to read when she was in prison. I sent her tapes.
but he can bring a lot more depth to the character and add more layers to this character to make him flawed. He would definitely make this character his own, and I'd really like to see it. So Ralph Fiennes as Professor X. So there is my original team of the X-Men. Please stay tuned for all new, all different, giant-sized X-Men. So that means Nightcrawler, Storm, Colossus, Wolverine, all these great X-Men. They'll be cast in the next episode. As always, let me know who you'd pick for the original X-Men in the comments below. And thank you to my patrons, Adam Gray, Jeremy Jacobs, Jenny Edwards, Gabe Marchanda, Gunnar Legland, Colleen West, Marco Perry, Roland, Aiden McShange, Lon Hudson, Kieran Hunt, George Conan, Brandon Warner, Sweevy, Alex Tao, Derek P. Bell, Jacob Wolf, Alexander Gardulo, Lisa Hewer, and Rachel Kilker. Thank you for your support, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.